I mean, it was so long as, I think that it was kind of, so long as they were genuine about kind of acknowledging what they did, you know, it's more like acknowledging what they did, asking forgiveness, then that was the...
You want it further more up? Or?
No, that's okay, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not easy. And I was also hearing that Nelson Mandela, after he got released, the first person he went for lunch was his, what you call, the cell, the man in charge of the prison. What do you call him? I forgot.
The warden? No?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he went to his place to have food.
Okay.
Like, wow.
That's nice.
I'm not sure if kindness comes from it. You don't need to worry about that. I'm not saying you don't encourage him like this. Harry,
It's all right. It's just motivation is a bit hard.
obeisance to my daughter, his understanding
patient love for his only son.
confused in the darkness of their ignorance, overwhelmed by
And a proclamation of the Dharma arouses us from stupid and frees us from the iron chains of our karma. Whose purpose is to use our fabrics, in the darkness of all ignorance. His peaceful body is adorned with 112 marks of Buddha, completed the 10 stages, achieving the highest perfection. Being pure from the beginning, Geshe, all loving one, the brilliance of your wisdom, illuminating the darkness and closing up. And they get insight to the Buddha's words and the text that explain them.
Sanji Chodan Sobi Chonamba Chancho Badi Rami Tatsuji Dagi Shushi Sanangi Krolam Bishi Sanji Sho Sanji Chodan Sobi Chonamba Chancho Badi Rami Tatsuji Dagi Shushi Sanangi Krolam Bishi Sanji Sho Sanji Chodan Sobi Chonamba Chancho Badi Rami Tatsuji Dagi Shushi Kangi Tuzini Zone, Tawatan, Bambi Cherry, Tambi Chun, Kodam Kela Chance. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So we're gonna do tea offering, I think. Sangha. Coffee offerings to the gurus.
Because it looks like that. In a Devju Tam Katu Kun Yurin to Chechian, Semjin in Chebani, Teni Rigby Temisons. Shortan Gather Shegu.
Oh yeah, Devju. Okay. So we're going to go back to the text and pick up from the point that we left off in the previous session. So we're looking at how good qualities depend upon the mind, and the text explains how the 6 perfections depend upon the mind. The last thing that we've read through yesterday was explaining how absorption also depends upon the mind. The Knower of Reality taught that even if recitation and hardships are practiced for long periods of time, they will be meaningless if the mind is distracted elsewhere.
In the tender, Chitan Chandela in a Lalan Tarela, then must but any Nada Kalako Pedwas, and Dutch blue Kachichiari, and Nagi Divji Soba Kacheva in a yam, Sam the Betty, any capsule change in a drochi, drawn the Tini, Kazus Kaji Durichiganada, Kazus Piglia. Any Diju Chigi Vainaya and Dij Jandalaya, member Yonadi, the Kabushoch Ra, or Dijas and Sungudas Ra, and Dinashingi, Jeruchigi, and the Ringasadra Namalaya, Sam Shandi Yangi, Dijelaya, that Nimbo the Masu, Chonseki Yomas, Nembu shoot the Son Yores.
The meaning of this section is quite easy. I mean, the meaning is easy. Putting it into practice is extremely hard. At least Geshe says that from a personal perspective or personal experience perspective, it is easier said than done. So then we might be working hard physically, experiencing some hardship. In our speech, we might be doing some recitation for a long time. But if the mind tends to wander off, to be scattered all over the place, then even despite the hard work, despite the physical hardship, despite the long recitations, the purpose that would have been accomplished would be quite small. And this is also what Lama Tsongkhapa says in his lamp illuminating the 5 stages. He says that mantra recitation with a mind that is distracted, mind that wanders off, renders that recitation to be ineffectual.
Tinza Tidi Kari Tolaya Katup Chigianada and Devja Kar Chigana Tagarana Mikpa Diteni Ani Chetuvaina Lavasumgi Nyamnelaya Pianchik Lavasumgi Nyamnel Haldun the Chik Ani Tingin Sati Surd Drumbugova Ani Devja Cheva Tagarang Tony Ani Tingin Druyong Yachik. Tende Chagiasares, Nagishon in Namalaya, Mixigi, Sud Tengin the Madrunaya, Pigi, Ani Taji Yezo, Lam Combat, Tagarang Togi, anything in the Drew Dredge, Sungur, Tatuzu, one the Taniras.
Whereas if you do your recitation with a mind that does not scattered, mind that does not wander off, you can accomplish the 3 trainings. You don't need to cultivate the training of concentration separately. This is at least what is stated in the mantra system. It is said that if you do your mantra recitation together with a concentration that is single pointed and does not wander off, you will not have to accomplish the training of concentration separately from the recitation of mantra. This is a particular point that is stated in the scriptural system of Tantra. Along the generation and the completion stages, you accomplish concentration together with recitations.
Kang Pigi, any Migwa Chanjugi, and Telia, Migwa Sonchini, any and Deva Kazusunrogo, Tangadi, Sabaina, any Tati, Shazik Tobialaya, and Tezam Yomade Sini, any Ni to Zunanaya, Sondos, Pardon to Jirum Chigitanda, any Mizimigi, any Leron Tam Kadulaya. Mixima Satanti, Pigi Kanji, Rixum Chip Dugi, Taniki, Imbadi, any Jerumichi, Tiquam Tony, any ye telest David Tony, any Nagi, and Nagi, Mixima, Boomchi, down to Baina, Jerumichi, Shazi Yonela, Tesson Yomarson, Lesho Coranolia, Mus to Sondus Ra.
So for example, if you were to perform an approximation retreat where you approximate a deity, and that might be involved with cultivating a practice of longevity, or a practice of white manjushri, or the recitation of Mixima, the verse from Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga. And you do that with sustaining the focal object, sustaining observation on the deity. It is said that there's no doubt that with a mind that is focused, that you will come to see the deity face to face. There's no doubt. So, for example, in the accounts of the life story of Lama Tsongkhapa, says that when he did his approximation of, or the retreat that renders one to be serviceable for particular actions, the serviceability retreat, he did the recitation of the verse Mixima. And the way that he has practiced it is through considering the main figure to be the personification of the protectors of the 3 lineages. And it was said in the practice manual that if you were to do that with a mind that is focused, that does not get scattered, if you do 100,000 recitation, there is no doubt that you will be able then to come to see the deity face to face.
Tinza tanda digi sik digi tanda di pe masuwa kechimbo ra semla ya samdi semla rali se di 그 시합을 잡아인 거 태국만 간주 라 그냥 나도 저기 다 믹스만 다양한 가보여 있느냐 믹스만 다음 카드려야 르디 지 가서다 지 수수 샤마는데 아니 나기 믹스만 다음 되어 있느냐 샘디 아니 가사kal은 참되지 삼발라 드니 춤제도디 텐투고도 왔어 아니 칸이 믹스만 되는 자 비게지 아니 얘기하는 자 마네트리는 자 카리 비네 좀 생각 가르사거니 아니 샘레야 지금 자 무다삼 아니 지 하도도 지 아니 란게 셴뱅 상로서 카리 이나가 남도라야 지 디용다 디마용세기 아니 사원이네 산자 매교로 저래도서 딜리지간 드로치니 아니 대바 가주 셔바 있느냐 아니 나기 개와sam다 윤고 이름도 대형마디 아니 야우지 차투메바도 베시우레샤스로 딘상 아니 sabsab진 남주다 아니 가서다 그래
So it's really important to think of the meaning of this point. It is important not to just say or verbalize the recitation that we do, but to do it with a mind that is focused. Like, for example, we might be, Geshe said that he might be doing the recitation of the Mixima verse, sitting on his seat in his room. So his body would be there, but the mind could be all over the place, wandering all over the place. And if the practice is done in that way, it renders the practice to be of no purpose. It doesn't fulfill the purpose of the practice. So we might be doing different recitations of the verse of Mixima, the 100-syllable mantra, the Mani mantra. We might be reciting the Dara mantra. Whatever we might be reciting, if the way that we recite it, the way that we sustain the mind, is with a mind that thinks of all sorts of affairs, we might be thinking of securing our own victory, even if it comes at the expense of others. If we set no limits or boundaries between what we can and what we cannot think of while we're doing the recitation, it will guarantee that whatever we recite, whatever might be the purpose of our recitation, that will not be accomplished.
Kamba Madea Sobatan, Sham Madea Sob, two shown the same dele in Drogueza, and Dimayon Chedu, and in Lut do September Sogoras. In Anganzu, which Ungogi, send the pass Mayan Yagi, Castle, Tabshito, Shida Chimekers, Nadovina, or Dindo Kabo didn't Chagdos, a Dichawaina, any Piggy down, something down, Chicken Drew said. The Yohankin Mundasra, Tiza, and a Suzu Samshan the young Drew Yumedi, the Suzu Haku and the Ding on the bed and Tamboni Sabzo Chivana, this chick, when I make them and Sardun, Sarsum de Rinaya, I was and Sardun de Rinaya Kazuted, and Chu, knitting good chick, the tools, and sugar Jumbina, and in Samsung, this chick Pingadosra.
So we might be doing a retreat, and when we make arrangement for that retreat, we arrange to sit in a particular way. We arrange to sit so that our posture would feel comfortable. And as it happens, when we sit in a particular posture, after some time, discomfort sets in. So our legs or knees might be hurting, and then inevitably the attention is being diverted to the discomfort that arises within the sphere of the body. So we arrange to sit from the very get-go to prevent those situations from occurring as much as we can, or at least to minimize them. But then as far as allowing the mind to wander off at other times in our retreat, we don't make particular preparation, or we don't put a lot of emphasis on preventing the mind from being scattered in other occasions when discomfort does not set in. So it is important to make sure that we do pay a special attention to do that, because if we do allow the mind to wander off, there is no way, there's no way that we will be able to attain calm abiding, shamatha, the state of absorption. So we really need to be careful in our approach to that. We need to be careful with our approach to our meditation practice, because if we do allow the mind to wander off, then there would be no purpose that will be fulfilled or accomplished in our retreat. Whereas if we make sure that the mind is still focused, and we do a recitation, we continue with the recitation of, for example, the verse of Mixima, and we do it for particular periods of time, at least, let's say that we set the goal to have at least one recitation of mala, of this verse, where the mind does not get distracted, it is beneficial. Right? If we make effort in doing that, it will be beneficial.
Sheriff the Samla Rally, but he Sajidi Tikabduras is an Amondes or a needed danding on your cubs, those cutting him against.
So we will then cover the next section in the text that explains how also wisdom depends upon the mind in relation to the perfection of wisdom. So Geshe considers that to be really important, and also as a token of auspiciousness, he just pulled out a needle from his seat, right? So having that conjecture of a needle in the seat and the perfection of wisdom is actually very auspicious. Geshe says at least it signifies that his wisdom is minute. Carry.
Yeah. I have a quick question. Can I just clarify, please, the deity that you're supposed to be focusing on? Is it because I think possibly three Buddhas are mentioned for compassion, wisdom, and Bodhisattva, or is it the Buddha that's on the front of the daily practice, which I
You mean the protector of the three lineages? Is that what you're asking?
Which Buddha do you focus on? Is there a name of which Buddha?
Or in relation to which practice?
In relation to doing his name, verses.
Okay, so in relation to the mixing up verses, which Buddha, which deity do you focus upon? Yeah. The mixing up drawing na. Dila yidangi so mi pakarachi na.
Tajidam mixing drawing kabdulaya Riksum Tani Ra Judin Jambian Pavacherisi Nubigi any channel doji to some chick divi Ransu Suda and me number chambadi and Jerumuchi to Saltami Meva Congo or Astinza ta di nangi pena yidam gnangi pena shirab chadu chubadi shirab chadu chubi yidam di ani yidam doji jishelaya sikogoras is a tinji meva china mandigo yigi marwas ineya pigi Nyemba Yin Rang Nalaya, and so Yidam D and it was a Kasiusi, your Chikania, Taji Javatini Mares.
The Mixima Lerula. In general, the deity that you focus on is the one that is a personification of the protectors of the three lineages, which means the lineage of wisdom, Manjushri, the wisdom of the lineage of compassion, Avalokiteshvara, the lineage of ability, Vajrapani. So the protectors of the three lineages are personified in a deity that arises in the aspect of Lama Tsongkhapa, right? So Lama Tsongkhapa embodies, personifies the protectors of the three lineages. So this is what you focus on, although when you look at the annotation for the approximation retreat of that is based on Mixima, it is not explicitly, overtly explain which deity you need to focus on. Geshe reckons that you can also then focus on the appearance of the wrathful manifestation of wisdom, which is Yamantaka, Vajrabharava.
And Chidani Yidam Doji Jishi tus and so Chivana Chidanda Yidam Karchina, Umeo de Yomaros, Inaya Mixigi, Jeromuchigi, any Zebin Nolaya, Jizun Jambianda, Be any Manzu Midamin Nanshin Chini, any Jizun Jambiang Givishin in Sechini, and Jeromuchilaya, Tavigi, Nengare, and to some of the Shuchik, Son Yubi, Lord Yores, Tinza, and Jeromuchi, Mixigi, Jizun Jambiang, and in Shivada, Tabusama, Mixigi, Tumaimbi, and in Java Yobachi, Drup to Yados, Chagores, Tinza, and Mixima, Mixima starting to Dimbana, so you don't do Gishilia, Chivana, Yahuyores, Germuchidina, Jeromuchi, Yidam Soda, Yidam Doji, Yimba Reatosh, again, the Sarkashi Sono, yes.
So you can take the main Yidam that you focus on for the recitation of Mixima to be Vajrabharava. It's not to say that it is absolutely not acceptable to take another deity as your focal object, but it works well here to take the Yidam Vajrabharava as what you observe in the recitation of the Mixima. Because when you look at the accounts of Lama Tsongkhapa relied upon his spiritual teacher, Manjushri, like relying upon another person in actuality. And therefore, when we think of Lama Tsongkhapa relying upon Manjushri, either the peaceful form of Manjushri or the wrathful form of Manjushri, which is the Yidam Vajrabharava, Yamantaka Vajrabharava, Geshe reckons that it works well if you focus on Yamantaka Vajrabharava. So if you regularly recite this verse, Mixima, at least Geshe's root teacher says that, of course, needless to say that while reciting the Mixima verse, one would focus on Yamantaka Vajrabharava.
That was Shirab Sam Ravibanis, Kanki Chugi Zuicho, Semi Sound the Machina, that would do Shum de Yang, Teda to me, Hinner Camps.
So then, in picking up from the next verse, let's just briefly look at the outline. So we're looking at how qualities depend upon the mind. Now we're looking at verse 17. Wisdom relies upon the mind. So it says in verse 17 then, even those who wish to obtain happiness and overcoming suffering will wander with knowing if they do not comprehend the secret of the mind. the principal Dharma.
대단한 저와도 나오야 가르쳐도 세대 셰르경 셈라 라데디 간사 강기 추기조 tempo chodu kyowa nemla mitembinas semgi sama tentambi dembanti mashina lanami bi deva tobatan covid dunga shumbun dejan tedan debi temeba kinar rang chambi sherab semrali bos.
Geshe Dhamma says in relation to this verse, wisdom also depends on mind. A person that is not a vessel for the main Dhamma or the supreme meaning, and is thus not shown this, does not know the secret of the mind, the ultimate truth. Although the wish to attain highest happiness and destroy the sufferings of cyclic existence, they naturally wander to the realms without respite, where there is nothing of these things they wish for. Therefore, wisdom depends on the mind.
Tereta, tatsu di re, dorduna takana jazarunju somananshi, inaya chugitsu sadi, chugitsu di ya, peshidus shavasaris, chugitsu chodela ya, pena manzu namju namchan chodan, kunu nyumu chod nischibi, pena kunu nyumu choki, ani kovi dibi, ani che tamchi, ani zu semlaya teni jonganchik, ro zu semgi chigiyoba, chik sungu yoros, tanibi che deda, zu ani semgi tabasayimba. Ani pigi tenan tambar sanamundu, semgi sama sanamundu, ani semgi ranje vesawa diyan, ani zo sem demba mardiwe toki, ani semgi ranje vesawa imachik, drupchini, di toni, ani tawatogi yobatan, sangi yoba, ani sangi yagi tabiyan, ani semgi sama di shibi toni, ani semgi shibi toni, ani tamjikima drugo mato, ani tabji kangi jen drumunibi, tundrik tsuri nisu, yorwas ra.
This verse says, they who do not know the main supreme Dhamma, this secret of the mind. Although Geshe Dhamma is clear in his commentary with respect to what this main supreme Dhamma is, that principle supreme Dhamma, still it's good to look at it from the viewpoint of the side of the thoroughly afflicted and the side of complete purity. So we regularly cycle in cyclic existence through the side of the thoroughly afflicted. So all phenomena, those conventionalities, which are merely imputed with the mind and are included within samsara, depend upon the mind as they are imputed by the mind, right? So from the viewpoint of the thoroughly afflicted, all those things that are subsumed under the banner of samsara or included within samsara, they depend upon the mind as they are merely imputed by the mind. But also looking at the other side, the side of the thoroughly, of the side of complete purity. Here we refer to that as the main supreme Dhamma, the secret of the mind, the nature of the mind, the luminosity or the clear light of the mind, the absence of true existence, through recognizing it, recognizing that supreme secret, the absence of true existence, recognizing that which is ultimately true, Buddhahood is afforded. We can attain the state of Buddhahood. It depends upon recognizing that nature of the mind, upon recognizing the absence of true existence. Through that, we attain Buddhahood.
Odiri dinza ta sherab ginangi sherab jadan sherab di semgi chashis lam digoras hinaya sherab ginang zo di tongni to sherab ya tongni to sherab ya tenya tongban di pena the chujin and jitruzu thingi tongni yording zo di and semgi chuni topic sherab di zo shagya sares kanzna sangi ge ri sangi sangi yoba jondi rig ton jogoras rig sheondi sangi rig zo di and semgi chuni le jan semgi chuni ton sem dendon imbala sem dendon imba gunzen cheni sangi yoba jogormado juje riba ye kangi jam ani sangi yoba di and sem dendon la madember jumni yomaras.
In general, with respect to wisdom, here we're looking at how wisdom depends upon the mind. So in general, wisdom, you can say that is part of the mind. However, here we look at wisdom in a more specific sense. We look at how wisdom realizing emptiness plays a particular role in our accomplishment of the state of Buddhahood. So wisdom realizing emptiness, particularly here, not just any type of emptiness. After all phenomena have that nature of emptiness, emptiness of true existence. But particularly here, we want to develop wisdom that realizes the empty nature of the mind, the suchness of the mind, its absence of true existence, which is what we call Buddha lineage or Buddha nature. It depends upon which the state of Buddhahood is possible. And without relying upon that nature of the mind, without relying upon the absence of true existence of the mind, Buddha lineage, Buddha nature, if we rather focus on other things, there would be not much that will be accomplished. The state of Buddhahood is not accomplished in that manner.
Tezada semgi sound de machina seg semgi sound di and sem demba matraba and wesa di diris kanji sound in a mena and kanji sem ranji matraba wesa di machina and sangi yoga dumnu mare and sangi tolu mare tau tolu mare kanji tu mares kanji di and mashi bardo and devat devata donghon shunji lo karmi kari yoba inaya and semgi and nilu tantamba ranjingi matraba dingul mansin bardo and kanchi tu menza and so semlaya thank you yobati dinti tole samdango wasares.
Therefore, this supreme Dhamma of the supreme Dhamma. Sorry, the principle and supreme Dhamma, this secret of the mind, here is referring to the lack of inherent existence, the lack of true existence. So without understanding it, without recognizing it, there is no way that we'd be able to attain the state of liberation, nor will we be able to attain the state of Buddha, the state of omniscience. So if a goal is to attain a high level of happiness, to remove suffering, without recognizing this ultimate reality, without recognizing the absence of true existence, of inherent existence, whatever we seek to attain happiness and freedom from suffering, none of them will come to pass.
Sumba sem songalam bebalanis and sem songalam bebalani dortemba the givasheva. Tambun dortembanis, Teddy dog is sem dini, legs on level song cha. Samsung tushu matoba tushu mambichis.
Let's move on to the next point. Looking at the commentary, we are looking at the method for guarding the trainings, guarding the mind. We've covered the first point, by guarding the mind, one comes to guard all. Then the reasons for that were explained. And now we're going to look at the section that explains making efforts in guarding the mind. First, so there are 2 points in that. There's a brief presentation and extensive explanation. Let's begin with a brief explanation in verse 18, which states, "This mind of mine, therefore, I shall hold it well, I shall guard it well. Apart from the discipline of guarding the mind, what shall one do with many disciplines?"
semgi yoborang bigi shimju cheba yoborang semgi kansamba dichia ma to bigi ani semgi masamba ji lunga ni gi toni chetuya ji yomaros kanji ludanga ni mudi ani semgi yobores tenza sem ya ji sontu baina ani 참으로 송투 yoba sem 마투 바이나 안 참으로 쇼드 yoba치 또 공무원이 차도스
When we look at our activities of body, speech, and mind, the body and speech are servants of the mind. Our body and speech do whatever the mind commands. Our body and speech do not act without the mind commanding them to take a particular action. And therefore, we need to guard the mind. Without guarding the mind, all mishaps will occur.
아니 쉬우지기 야구치기 연동도기 넘버 대한대한 아니 신주로기 샘지기 토니 연구도스 수주치야기 아니 신 수주치야기 샘 랑고고타야기 샘 진지지기 토니 피기라야지 아니 남규 아니 땡데데 대연구요로스 간지 아니 도저 사말로 아니 야다 두세디 조 샘리야 공용 샘리야 투여버디야 다 세우 쇼지로스 라
So we act in a particular way with our body and speech. And we often pretend as if we're doing so well, as if our physical and verbal behavior are so wholesome. And yet we do it in a way that is totally in error, erroneous. It's clear that often we involve in that deception, pretending as if our activities are wholesome. Whatever is done, be it negative or positive, first and foremost, it depends upon your motivation.
딘자다 아니 샘기 투슈 송투바이노 아니 투슈 셴 망보치 송투다마투다치 아니 여마요기 쳬바메디기치 망비치 식자세 딘디시 송고라스라.
So therefore, looking again at verse 18, it says, apart from the discipline of guarding the mind, what shall one do with many disciplines? So the main discipline here, and the word that is used for discipline is the type of yogic discipline. So the type of discipline that we should adopt is guarding the mind. What other disciplines are there apart from guarding the mind?
Re nyeba pongotans yondin druba semla raleba tedavena dagi rangi semdini trembate shijingi lebar soni minyamba lebar sonba chade sem songi tushu matoba sem songi tushu shen kanton la soba mambu chishi chagobe chishi cha goba mambu chishi cha goba maybe so still machine.
It says in a commentary, abandoning faults and achieving qualities depend on the mind. Therefore, I shall guard this mind of mine well with mindfulness and introspection and not let it degenerate. Apart from the discipline of guarding the mind, what shall one do with the many other disciplines of prayers and so forth that do not guard the mind? They are unnecessary.
Niba shebala shes, sem songu sultan songu vigyunze, songu penyu, sombala temple lemba o. Tambo sem songu tsune, matang trovi trenani, jimdi maya pachichi, gewang antwe nebekyan, sem demand start songs.
Now, we looked at a brief explanation of the instruction to make effort in guarding the mind, let's look at the extensive explanation, which consists of 4 points. Let's first of all look at the 4 points. So we have the way to guard the mind, the reasons it is necessary to guard it, the benefits of guarding it, and devoting oneself to mindfulness in order to guard the mind. Now let's look at the first point, which is the way of guarding the mind, the way to guard the mind. Now, verse 19 reads, if one is in the midst of restless crowd, one will focus and be conscientious of one's wound. Similarly, in the midst of bad people, one guards continuously the wound of the mind.
So, and bedin the rest that in Devon Sudo, Martin Tova the Kyo Kovachin, Martin be Trona, Lula Mayu be Kyo Tap, then Jim the Maya Pausachi with Shandros, Kyo number new, Kiwi, Kinchi be Trona Nevica, same month out so good, Mason tea Genji, Torrington, Taruso, Chevicheros.
This verse is rather clear, and also the commentary. Let's look at the commentary. It says, a person with a wound on his body who is in the midst of a restless crowd will apply himself very strongly to protect the wound. Similarly, if one is in the midst of bad people who will generate afflictions in one's mind, then one needs to continuously guard the wound of one's mind. If one does not guard one's mind, then it will be the condition that cuts off the life of one's higher status and liberation.
Niva song gubi ginzenes, Mayi dunko chungwi, Jabon Mayi Pachena, Dunjum, Rinjum, Jabata, Semki, Mata, Jimusons.
Let's look at the reason for having to guard it, which is the second point in that extensive explanation, and it is covered by verse 20. If one is afraid of even the small suffering of a wound and guards it, then why does one not guard, frightened by the catcher and crusher mountains, the wound of the mind?
Luki Mai, Dungal Chungwi, Jabon Mayi Pacherinas, Sem Yama, Nyawa Dunjum the Sobi, Rinjumbi, Dungal Jitabayi, Dicton the Sobi, Semki Ma, Tachum, Tachi, Muson, Yemichimbi, Sam, Somba Chawas.
It is suitable to guard a wound due to fearing slight physical pain. Then why does one not guard the wound of the mind from negativity and downfalls due to fearing the sufferings of being crushed by the mountains of the Catcher Mountain hell? Right, so there is this crushing hell as part of the presentation of the hell realms. This is what the Catcher Mountain hell refers to. So again, it says, why does one not guard the wound of the mind from negativity and downfalls due to fearing the sufferings of being crushed by the mountains of the Catcher Mountain hell and the Crusher Mountain hell? Both of these would be the result of mental degeneration.
There's that some of that Chig Nanga Sao. And on the similar to your body, Bena Duma Chig Chindy Chonsum Kandajina, so similar to your bata, and Chig leg getty Kandajinia, so similar to your biggie, Chig Nibata Masona, each Tembu Jimena, and the sum to your coveros in that the Zo Tolia, Jamba Kana Kanzo Chebaina. And so similar to do something else. Then the just said that the Muslim will come to the so and it's so sunny and some of Tandani no do something and some of the to Saros, the Madove and the Kadu in a chick and Kasha's a shen sort of layer, Kashan dead by now and so same became Tontuya, Kabushu Chagras.
The section is quite clear in explaining how suffering, happiness, and so forth, they depend upon the mind. Great suffering, medium, small suffering depend upon the mind. Also, negative actions and virtuous actions depend upon the mind. So first off, we need to develop trust in the working of karma, in the working of actions, to see how they depend upon the mind, and likewise, great, medium, and small suffering, which are results of negative actions, they also depend upon the mind. Without developing trust in the working of karma, it would be difficult to develop qualities to our mind.
That's sumba song payers. That's some song to wine. That go again say pay country of Slavinus. Joban did nature, giving a bit train nation, penetration and nature, don't so temper yammers.
Let's look at the next point in the outline, which is the benefits of guarding it in verse 21. So it says, if one lives by such a conduct, one is suitable to abide amongst bad people or amongst women. The stability of striving in the vows will not degenerate.
Somebody and gave it to the nature. Say, by journal read us.
Well, it says in this verse, one is suitable to abide amongst bad people or amongst women. Anyway, Geshe says that we can exchange this word women with men, right? So one is suitable to abide amongst bad people or amongst men.
Kanji Suzuki Samsung to Wina, Anchi Yul Ne Kandrajilaya, any Deva Yinaya, any Suzuki, any Tomba Manyambar, and Yahuch Son to Yungaris, the mother and a Suzu Samsung to Wina, and Kandraji Bigilaya, and a Chikujala Deva Yinaya, and Nyanga maybe never saw in your maras.
If you got the mind, wherever you are, regardless of what that place be, the place, your residence, and so forth, you will not allow your vows to degenerate. Whereas if you do not guard the mind, even if you live in a place that is completely run down, completely poor, there's no guarantee that your vows will not degenerate.
Nyumungo be choban dindi, Gundu never channel, Kungru Jingi, giving and be trained Nesem. Chaba Jingi and the Pitanji Gira Nashingi, Pom Pomo, Tre, Kandajala Nejano, Donson Jingi, Energy Galon Pama, Getso Pama, Kandajinaya, Donson Temba Yamban Mungur way, and Tembuch in the shoe to grace.
In the commentary, it says, if one continually practices stopping the afflictions, the stability of the mind striving in the vows will not degenerate, regardless of whether one abides in the midst of bad people with much anger, or whether one abides in the vicinity of the women or men with much attachment, the attachment that will bring the degeneration in one's vows, right? So if you guard the mind, that will not happen.
Shiva Samsung, Temple Lambani. Dag in the Kurdetan, Lutan so Melhashing, Gavashin, Yam Line, Seminam in Yamajas.
Last point in this section explains devoting oneself to mindfulness in order to guard the mind. That's covered by verse 23. Let's look at it. It says, you wish to protect your mind, guard with wholehearted effort, mindfulness, and introspection. I request with hands folded. 22. Did I cover? Okay, sorry. Thank you very much. I was just testing you. All right, so verse 22. It is all right to not have gain or praise a body or livelihood. it is also all right for other virtues to degenerate, but do not let the mind degenerate at all. You have passed the test.
Dagi segula sobe, dagi nyebatan, chala sobe, kurditan, rangulitan, so nebi, seva mejan, hashin, Samsung of the Tevi, Gawashin, Yambalai, Tebachim Sem, Nami Yambar Majawos.
Commentary to this verse says, although one gains no food, clothing, and the like, receives no praise, such as prostrations, and has no livelihood to support body and life, that is easy. To lose virtue unprotected by the mind is easy as well. But the mind of the great vehicle should not be allowed to degenerate under any circumstances.
Niba Samsung wigi tap temba the season song ni temba the shepherd temba ni Samsung deba namlani temba ten season ta tamje baby song shichi dan teda temu jors.
Now let's look at the second main point in the extensive explanation of the way to practice. So just keeping in mind that the first point was the method for guarding the trainings, guarding the mind. Now we're going to look at point 2, which is the method of guarding the mind, guarding mindfulness and introspection. And this point consists of 2 sections. First off, the brief presentation in verse 23. And then we're going to look at an extensive explanation of the way to guard mindfulness and introspection, or mindfulness and alertness. So first thing first, let's look at a brief explanation in verse 23. You wish to protect your mind, guard with wholehearted effort, mindfulness and introspection. I request with hands folded.
Gosum Gilekab Chitter, Gurtobi, Shijanta, Sola Pavjan, Minyamber, Sonshichi, Shivali, Dan Tedan Timo Jashi, Sova Devsos.
So here Shantideva is beseeching us personally to guard alertness and mindfulness. Even if we don't see him, he's still asking us to guard mindfulness and alertness. As the commentary says too, that you wish to guard your mind, since one cannot guard one's mind if one is separated from mindfulness and introspection. Do not let the mindfulness that does not forget the virtuous objects and the introspection that analyzes the situation of the 3 doors degenerate. I, called Shantideva, request this with my hands folded. There is also the version or another rendition of this verse that says, I advise. So rather than saying I request, it says, I advise with hands folded.
Bekajile, Domba Chijin Jong, Tedarian Shadows. Baby son shichiba gyurmini shadows lost this because you know what you shadows.
Anyway, the comment at the end of Geta Dhammarincha's commentary to this section says there is also the version that says, I advise or I instruct you with folded hands.
Any jump in the Kuku Song Song Soti, any jump in the any Song Shabigi, any Tanda Kangur Tumbagat, yes, Sigora, but Digita, any jump in the Kuku Song Song Diri, Son Nashingi, any Jassichim Shivali, and the Tandi Chalia, Tangaram Soli Yuvita, Jassichim Shivali, Kuku Song Song Di, and Jonjucham Dichagi about that, Siu Shujiras. In the Dinashin, given the Jassichim Shivalata, and Jagapabi like Tumbi Jagarki, and the preventions are Chitanki, Gagarki, Yumikuma, Sogi, and Chik Milaya, Javajev, Shivajev Katuya, Chaja Chatan Chikura, but the Namjur than Jimmy Tony. Kordachi Tomomevani, the Comshido did, any Chik Chaja Chatan, the Yovenza, Mixage, that Chitona, Jingin, any Chaja Jago, Tona Jingin, Konzichi Chaja Jad, Juma Mahimbatovski. Yoros that Dindichi Pena and prevention which Gansolia, Chaja Chichin, Sombayan, so much Jetuana, one turning on the Assembly, so Mandas led, pursuing service.
The Buddha gave a big body of teachings. So, for example, we have the 108 volumes of the teaching that the Buddha gave, the Kangyu, which are said to be the ambassadors or the physical representation and also the speech representation of the Buddha. And the same thing can also be said with respect to Shantideva being the physical embodiment and also the speech embodiment of such teaching. So here Shantideva, being a great Indian master, is saying that with my palms pressed, I'm beseeching you, I'm requesting you. It is also particularly helpful to think about it from the perspective of Indian culture when such gestures are being made. So when someone is approaching you and is asking you with folded hands, with palms pressed together in that way, it carries a certain power, a certain significance. It might be foreign to us because it's not our culture to make requests in such a way, but if you understand also the cultural context, then you could understand how here Shantideva is imploring us, is beseeching us with folded hands to act in such a way. So it carries a certain power if you are able to contextualize it traditionally and culturally.
And Kabchilaya, Ganuchi, Chapchindi, in Lagbalaya, test Kursora, and Nidi King Mazik Sajra Julia, Chile, Gang the Sisora, against some general Yangalaya, those in Kanamisi, how Kiwi Grace and Dirijik Sons are not Conja Kazan Chinman, and meet you round your shorts. The Jazichum show like Ganzulaya. One time kills Kuchi Tuchi sick and he Susugi sent the sorrow cheese. Temujay original Jetovana, tending on Zulia, and he Yochimuchik in a Danganzo Sonda Ungli Dogita Dirigi Jeto Menaya and it Jojuchemu song the Muslim on the Dus Gigi over the Primasu Kawasamburas.
When Geshe was nursing his root teacher prior to his passing away, they got to the point in which his teacher was bedridden. So he couldn't go to toilet anymore, and Geshe had to nurse him and also, to helping with cleaning up after his bowel movements and so forth. So Geshe was wearing gloves, but there were occasions in which things just became slightly more messy. And Geshe, though trying to hide it from his teacher, there were occasions in which his teacher saw that, and one of them, his teacher kind of pressed his palms together and said that you will definitely attain good results of that in future lifetimes. And Geshe was so kind of touched by it that he said that naturally kind of he started crying. So also here, Shantideva is saying with folded hands, I request you, I'm beseeching you to guide your mind. So it carries a certain power if it is done in such a way.
Dilda, Gastum Sholaya, Simjing, Tembashi, Mato, and a Nanzunashingi, and Lugnam Chigdan, Sam Samia Chik, Logachi, there was Savanini, the Yomaras, Simjing, Tembashi, Sambal Penny, and Jasin him to Chursum, Roasta is a Kongi Tulaya, Simjing, Tembashi, Konde Digi, Tachi, and Simjing, Tem Dria di. That Chomden delay and Chigma 아니 내루다 랍제 괜히 아니 녀는 녀리 모두 딜 로스직 아니 심징 된 제단직 매바인자 답에 아니 타마 위튼다 कुछ तुझे सिक्स चार्ज चीज़ क्या तो सेम चीज़ सोन रहा चीज़ सोया पेना तब दिन जी जान चीज़ ता सोन योर बस रहा
Whatever Shantideva does is solely done for the benefit of others. It's not that his heart and deeds are dissimilar. It's not that his mental activities and physical activities are dissimilar. So that being the case, when we look at the message that's being put across here, the advice that came from the Bhagavan, the explanation of the reality, the mode of abidance that is presented here, Shantideva is making a request here. Please heed those teachings. Please heed my advice.
तेज़दा याज़िब शोल दिन जी की पे ऐने रेवत जावचे ऐने सों बाई नया क्या कर सों बाई नया गांज दिन यंग में से सुरेशन शाहजा बाइंदा दी तब मिशिंग इंजी की माथुंग इंजी की को शिंगी ओमर थुगी ओमर नेसु लोगर मत दा गांज रोजी की थुजिंद शी शेंद तेनी ऐने काला माज़ी बाइना तेनी तंग वंदे ठाने की थप क्यों शोची द चारों को असरा
So, having implored us in such a way, those who do not understand these teachings, those who cannot do that, they're just incapable of doing that. But let's look at our situation. If we understand what is being stated here, and yet knowingly we discard that, then what other pitiful behavior can be explained? This is totally unsuitable or inappropriate to knowingly discard this request.
तन्नी बस शेबल नी शीजिन में भी निमिक था शीजिन सोंगे तब से टेम्पर सोंगो तंबो शीजिन में भी निमिक लंगा टेंशन द ठना चावा खाना या तू चुमा था शरब नंदा तो मिंगिरवा था सुटम नंदा तो मिंगिरवा था हूँ सब गेवन जीव था हर माजी भी गेवन डी भी खेचे बोस
Now, looking at the next section, the extensive explanation of the method of guarding the mind, guarding mindfulness and alertness, or guarding mindfulness and introspection. So there are, first of all, 2 points. The disadvantages of lacking introspection, and guarding mindfulness is a method of guarding introspection. Beginning with the advantages of lacking introspection, the disadvantages, of lacking introspection, there are 5 points. If one is separated from mindfulness and introspection, any action one performs has little force. Wisdom will not become pure. Ethics will not become pure. Virtues accumulated in the past will be destroyed, and the accomplishment of virtues not previously performed will be hindered.
담보니 텐시단 타나 자와칸야 투초원이스 네기 튜비 메타네 레는 콘란 투메바 대지몸 셈투바 레는 콘란 투메도스
Let's begin with the first point that comes under the heading of the faults of lack. Any action devoid of introspection lacks power is the first point in the faults of lacking introspection. So verse 24 says, any action devoid of introspection it says, a person that is racked by illness does not have energy for any work. Similarly, a mind disturbed by ignorance does not have energy for any work.
네기 튜비 메타네 싱글 소베 레는 콘라 투메바 대신도스 시시 메비 롱돌라 몽비 셈투비 게베 레는 콘라 투메도스
A person who is racked by a strong illness does not have the ability to work in the fields. Similarly, a mind that is racked by the ignorance of not knowing what needs to be practiced and what needs to be abandoned does not have the strength for any type of virtuous action.
Sherab namda du mingirwanes. Da sherab namda du mingirwani. Shijin maybe sem dembi tödan samtan kombayan. Lodur kumbi chujindu tembalan temenis.
Looking at the next point in that section, one does not generate pure wisdom without introspection. It says, even the listening, contemplation, and meditation of someone having a mind devoid of introspection, like water in a leaking vase, will not be kept in the mind by memory.
Shijin da tana sherab pusum soba mingirti. Shijin maybe sem da dembi kansaki töbatan sambatan kombi sherab har yobayan. Pena lodur kumbi chu nandu menebas shabdova lodova kumbi chu nandu meneba saudova jendu shijin yambi chi tembalani temenidi sherab yamba görüyorsunuz.
It says in the commentary to verse 25, if one is separated from introspection, then one will not generate perfect wisdom. A person may even have the wisdom of listening, contemplating, and meditating from before. But if they lack introspection, then, like water, that does not remain in a broken vase. They do not abide in mindfulness, and thus the wisdom degenerates. This is due to degenerated introspection.
Sumba Tsultrim namda du mingiwani töden tebat jandamni zomba fulne tumayan shije mebi gen chabi tomin yoldan çeban gürs.
Let's look at the next fault of lacking introspection. One does not generate pure morality. In verse 26, it says, a person listening, having faith and striving strongly in many ways, because of having the fault of lacking introspection, becomes sullied by the dirt of downfalls.
Mandu teba da denshi şöyle tebat jandamni gevalı jobi zomba fulne tumayan landur ginela shije mebi gen chabes gü tomin yolda çeban güvi shije sonla beber chavo.
A person with faith who has listened to many teachings and strives strongly in many different ways to practice virtue, but who has the fault of not having introspection that knows what is right and what is wrong, will be sullied by the pollution of the dirt of the downfalls. Therefore, one should strive in guarding introspection.
Sheba monsa be gewan jibani shije mebi chomgonta jambanyambi jetangwi sonum tang nyesa kya.
Now, the fourth fault that is pointed at lacking introspection is earlier accumulated virtue is destroyed. The thief of a lack of introspection follows degenerated mindfulness. Although having accumulated merits, the thief steals them and one goes to the lower realms.
Shije mebi metani nyumu bi chongonta gewi miba jobi chamba nyambi jesutan gewi miba jebi ingeli jebi chamba nyambi jesutan hunsa be sonum ki nortan nyever sajan kombu nor tokpete choni Uwondroshi, Gewe Uni, Nandundro, Gyurus.
It says in the commentary to this section, a person without introspection will be robbed by the thief of the afflictions of their earlier accumulated wealth of merits due to degenerated introspection, which forgets the virtuous object. when earlier accumulated wealth is stolen, the person becomes a beggar. Similarly, when earlier accumulated merits is stolen, the person becomes destitute of merits and goes to the lower realms.
ngabang har maji bi gyawan tri bi kek shaba ni nyumun chongkong chol dini lakab chowa chaba ti lani gyuni gentro che dendu so gen jomberchi.
Now, the final fault that is pointed out here with respect to the lack of introspection is if it obstructs the achievement of virtue not accumulated earlier. This gang of affliction robbers looks for an opportunity. If they get a chance, they steal virtue and kill off the life of a happy rebirth.
Shijin ki maso na nyumun bi chomgun ki chol dini gewi non trobi lakab chowa chaba ti la nyebar gyuni gewa trochen di drebu dendro dan tabi sokjan jombar chebi shijin mebi nyemik samni gosum ki nekab chedar gyun hamdu tobi shijin songwala bebar chavos.
It says in the commentary, the gang of afflictions, robbers, look for an opportunity to steal the wealth of virtue. If one does not protect oneself with introspection and they get a chance, they will steal one's virtue and also destroy the result, happy migrations and the life of liberation in the progress. Having contemplated the faults of not having introspection, one should strive in introspection that checks the situation of the three doors. Reading through that is easy, isn't it? So Paul was asking previously, should we be holding in mind the meaning of the mantra and the visualization, or one of or the other, depending on the practice? Jude chebe capsula yandi idam la mikpa chego res in line ba so zandila yang kan sabadi nga yamna mixema dila sabayandi tunda di chengo gerbes kan sena quran niga dende chekale kawores chezan chik idam dende chengo gerbes Mitsama Chengogres, Niga Chegogres, and the Chinas.
He idam injimi mixama dam kal idam gongors lametas. Kan deva kan cheva digi pena miximi joja de kharre riksum gitani and jamgon amutunga wachimbo. Ya so tavia kanji di kalaya ani riksum gitanit shavat ta ila disa gongo goras ti gombe toni ini ngani mixman jang to baina ani dindiji gita chitsar mum chidre kaptula ani jawatsung ka bagi shangus jigres and dan jigi and leong nyama nang ti khayores
네, 그런 제어들 제단계 제어치를 그래서 이 제단체는 생활치 잠바이나 그래서 이담라테네 생활치 잠바이나로 봐. 근데 저기 이단된 mikpa체고 그러베 생활기 튼다 mikpa체고 그러베
생활된다. 또 생활된다.
Well, Geshe says that first of all, with respect to the recitation of Mixima, then we should keep in mind, we should observe Lama Tsongkhapa being the personification of the protectors of the three lineages, Manjushri, Avalokiteshvara, and Vajrapani. So this is the import of the verse of Mixima, and this is the main thing that we hold the mind to while doing this recitation. At least this is what is found in the annotation of the serviceability retreat that is done on the basis of the verse Mixima. Now, looking at that question in general, not necessarily with respect to Mixima, but let's say that you do a certain recitation of mantras. When you do a deity practice, should you be holding in mind mainly the deity or the meaning of mantra? Well, Geshe says that the main thing that you should hold in mind is the meaning of the mantra that you recite.
Thank you.
Rinpoche Mate Panu Kegirchi Kepanyampa Mepayam Gone Gondo Pewa Shu Kandira Wekaway Shinka Prendan Dewa Malu Juwe Chenresi Wante Tigyaso Shapesi De Padu Thank you Sunju Jupe Chana Pemo Tenzin Gyatsola Sawa De Soshin Tu Chan Chin Chan Gun Gawe Tenzin Yon Bebe Ponzo Do Cho Song Ko We Le Maju Pa Dan So Tu Shi Gun Du Sha
따단 쇼에서 말래. 아니 지기 팀.
Are you losing your voice or?
I'm losing my mind.
But at least not your sanity.
Maybe
Maybe
that's
that too. Paul, you're looking well tonight.
Thank you.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Shannon.
Yeah.
Hi there, Victoria.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
All right, sort of.
What's the sort of for?
Well, I don't know. I have to complain about something. There are always ample things to complain about. You've been well, keeping well?
Yeah.
That's good.
Walking around with me.
That's good. We saw forgot his name. Anyway, never mind.
Can't remember.
Sorry?
Can't remember.
Yeah, I forgot the name of that person, but anyway, never mind. All right.
Take care.
See you later.
Thanks very much. Thanks a lot.